Morning. How's everybody? Thank you. That's a great. No, come on. Good morning. Thank you. I am Lee Eskelson. I'm the professor and chair of the Sports Entertainment and Event Management Department in the College of Hospitality Management at Johnson & Wales University. I want to welcome you today to Game Days Advancing Innovation, a multi-year seminar series presented by Johnson & Wales University and the TD Garden and the Boston Bruins. Today's theme is Press Play, the emerging digital culture of sports and entertainment. We have an exceptional lineup of industry experts, Johnson & Wales professors, and alumni with us today to discuss emerging digital trends and new technologies in the execution of major sports, entertainment, and events. Our experts will also discuss the increasing challenges of cyber threats and security faced by the sports and entertainment industry. Your turn now. To view our digital program for today's seminar, please use our QR code available on your table. Can everybody find their QR code on their table? Excellent. Before I introduce our MC for the day, I want to extend a Johnson & Wales University Wildcat welcome to our Johnson & Wales students, faculty, staff, and alumni, as well as the gracious team from the TD Garden and the Boston Bruins organization. It's been an early start for everyone this morning, and we thank you all for traveling to the TD Garden, New England's largest sports and entertainment arena, and the home of the NHL Boston Bruins and the NBA Boston Celtics. Today we are in Legends, a private members-only establishment open exclusively to Bruins and Celtics season ticket holders and game plan ticket plan holders. Again, thank you to the management of the TD Garden for allowing us to use this exclusive space. Johnson & Wales' national reputation as a leader in sports entertainment and event management, hospitality management, food service management, and cybersecurity education has brought many exciting opportunities and partnerships to our university. In 2018, we were proud to be designated the official educational partner of the Boston Bruins and the TD Garden. To guide us through today's program, we are pleased to have Rhode Island's own Michaela Johnson, the in-arena host of the Boston Bruins, as our Mistress of Ceremonies. Michaela Johnson is a native of East Providence, Rhode Island, where she spent the past 12 years co-hosting the Rhode Island Show, a lifestyle television morning show. She stepped away from the show to spend more time with her two young children, but still can be seen in Boston throughout the season as the in-arena host for the Boston Bruins, a position she has held since 2016. Most recently, she has had the pleasure of co-hosting the NHL All-Star events, the NHL Winter Classic, and the NHL Stadium Series throughout the country. This is a demanding time of year in the NHL season for her, and therefore we sincerely appreciate and are honored to have Michaela with us this morning. Thank you for your time. Today we consider you an honorary Johnson & Wales Wildcat. Please help me extend a Wildcat welcome to Rhode Island's own Michaela Johnson.
Thank you so much, Professor Eskelson, and thank you all for being here. I'm really proud to be a Wildcat today. I've even dressed the part, so that's good. And I want to commend you all to kind of echo what Lee said, because you're here and you showed up. I'm going a little off script here, so go with me on this. But you will get out what you put in when it comes to anything with your career. And I want to commend you all for waking up at 6 in the morning, getting on that bus, fighting the traffic, and coming here, because you're already one step ahead of the game. So just give yourselves a round of applause. You're here, you showed up, that's a big part of it. That counts as something. I love coming to the Garden, whether it's for a game or for an event like this, and I'm so happy to serve as your Mistress of Ceremonies for the day. As Lee mentioned, we're going to be hearing from a lot of wonderful professionals about the importance of technology and innovation in both sports and entertainment venues. Being someone who literally runs around this place on a somewhat daily basis, I know how much is being done in terms of technology, the changes, the innovation, the advancements, and you need to know how to pivot and handle those challenges or obstacles when they're presented at you. So as much as you guys are here to learn, I am too, and I'm sure some of the other professionals will gain even a small piece of nugget that they'll take with them and use in their future. So to start today's program and provide a welcome from the management of TD Garden, we have Tim Townsell, the Senior VP of Business Operations. Now, Tim joined TD Garden as GM back in 2017 and was promoted to Senior Vice President of Business Operations in 2021. So please join me in welcoming Tim.
Hi, everyone. First, level set for me. Who has been here before? Who's been to the TD Garden as a fan? Okay, about half. Who's a Bruins fan? About the same hand. Celtics fans? Who hates the Bruins? Can't do that. Can't do that. Well, hey, first of all, welcome to the Garden, the TD Garden. We are so happy to host you, and thank you to Lee, to Lisa, to Angelo, the whole Johnson & Wales team for making this event happen today. It really is an honor for my team at the Garden to be a part of this, to be a part of Johnson & Wales and to be that official education partner, to play a role in that. Thank you also to Brent Desati and Karen for really managing that partnership with Angelo. For our team, it's really exciting because there's mutual benefit. Our group gets to play a role in some of the curriculum that hopefully some of you have experienced or will experience in your time at Johnson & Wales. And then selfishly, for Delaware North, we believe we have an inside track on recruiting and hopefully convincing all of you through days like today that Delaware North is a great place to work, whether it's here in Boston or around the world. We have, I think, at last count, and it's probably an old number, so earmuffs, Brent. I think we had 200 Johnson & Wales alums that were working for us. Hopefully that number has gone up, but I'm confident that futuristically that number will go up a lot. So as you're here today, as you're going through your day, we are so proud of our building, and I know you're going to get to do a tour with the Sports Museum. The TD Garden is 28 years old, right? And we've toured places, I won't name names, but there's new buildings out there. We believe that TD Garden, from technology, from innovation, from capital infusion, we really do stand toe-to-toe with all of the new buildings in our space, and hopefully you'll agree. But so exciting. The technology and innovation just syncs up so well with who we are as Delaware North, who we are as the Boston Bruins and TD Garden. So on behalf of the group, welcome to TD Garden and excited to play a role today. Thank you.
Joining us as JWU, TD Garden, and the Boston Bruins enter their 5th year of their partnership is the president of Johnson & Wales Providence campus, Marie Bernardo Souza. She might be a familiar face because we know that she loves to cheer on your 16 varsity teams as they compete in various sports. And President Bernardo Souza also recognizes the importance of an event here today, extending the education beyond the classroom. So please join me in welcoming President Marie Bernardo Souza.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Michaela, for your introduction. And Tim, thank you so much for your words of wisdom. One of the things that Michaela said is critically important. She said the first thing you did was you showed up today. And that is something that I am confident no matter where I speak, I know that our JWU students and our alumni show up and bring their very best every day. I do want to take a moment and welcome and thank all of our alumni guests and university faculty for helping us provide what I see as a transformative experience for our students through your enthusiastic participation in press play, the emerging digital culture of sports and entertainment. Again, Tim, thank you, and your gracious staff at TD North for welcoming us here to Legends. And thank you also to the Boston Bruins organization for your support and partnership throughout the years. 5 years ago, when Johnson & Wales entered into this exciting multi-year collaboration with the Boston Bruins and TD Garden, we proudly became known as the official education partner of the Boston Bruins and TD Garden. Through this partnership, the university has offered educational programs that connect both JWU's academic and industry strengths with New England's largest sports and entertainment arena, TD Garden. In 2019, through this partnership, we launched the educational series, Game Days and Advancing Innovation, providing students and educators with day-long interactive educational experiences here at TD Garden. From our first program, Eat Well, Play Well, to last year's 24/7 Total Fan Experience, our students have had an incredible opportunity to engage with top industry leaders, which has enabled them to cultivate a fundamental understanding of the connection between sports and entertainment events and academia. This year, our program has evolved to blend two distinct disciplines, the guest experience and technology. At Johnson & Wales University, we are proud of our success in preparing the next generation of leaders in culinary, sports entertainment, event management, hospitality management, business, and technology, and many of our graduates have gone on to make their mark in this world. Today, however, is a little bittersweet as we commemorate the life and work of Chef Keith Garman, JWU class of 2021, whose life ended unexpectedly and too soon last year. We are honored to dedicate today's seminar in recognition of his extraordinary impact as a chef for the Boston Bruins and his effort in mentoring our students. You will get to enjoy one of Chef Garman's most popular recipes with your lunch today, delicious gluten-free banana oatmeal bread, especially prepared by the Legends culinary team. Please pause for a moment of silence with me as we honor the life and legacy of Chef Keith Garman. Thank you. To all our students joining us today, please make the most of this unique and exciting learning experience. Take the opportunity to ask questions after each session, engage in thoughtful discussion today and after today's program. Meet the industry professionals and the alums who have graciously joined us here today. I'm looking forward to today's exciting program. Thank you all. Let's press play and welcome Michaela Johnson back to the podium.
Thank you, Madam President, and we hope that all of you have an enjoyable and educational experience here today. And we know technology is part of everyone's daily life, whether it's active or passive participation. Raise your hand, you could be honest if you've already looked at your phone by the start of this presentation. Yeah, so you know, we're surrounded by technology and it's not going anywhere. But the improvements in technology and the advancements that we see certainly have an impact in the events, sports, and entertainment industries. They present a whole new challenge in terms of organization and management, while also maximizing potential for innovative marketing opportunities. Now, consumers will also have an increased variety of options of where they want to spend their sports and entertainment dollar. But with all of these new challenges come questions. How do you protect your data in the new and ever-changing digital society? Well, we're going to answer some of the questions that you may have in your mind already, and you might learn a little something new. Our panelists and speakers today are going to touch upon the advancements, the innovation, and we're also going to learn more about the increasing challenge of cyber threats and security in the sports and entertainment industries. I know with my role as an in-arena host for the Boston Bruins, I'm curious to know how that could affect something as large as the NHL as a whole and other sports arenas nationwide. But most importantly, you will have the opportunity to learn about the variety of career opportunities available to you within sports, entertainment, event management, along with the cybersecurity as well. You may think you know what you want to do, but who knows, after today's panel, your eyes might be open to another venue for your future. And before we get to those discussions and those panels, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. We are so honored to be joined by Daniel J.W. King, Chief of Cybersecurity in Region 1, New England, for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency within the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And when you have a title as long as that, you know he's a guy that you're going to want to listen to. Mr. King is headquartered right here in Boston, where he oversees CISA, cybersecurity services and support via cybersecurity advisors throughout New England. They work with partners to defend against today's digital and physical threats and to reduce risk and enable secure and resilient infrastructure into the future. And before his time with CISA, Mr. King was global lead for IBM Security Command. Plus, Mr. King served 30 years on active duty with the U.S. Army, retiring as a colonel. His service included Desert Shield and Desert Storm, Joint Endeavor, Iraqi and Enduring Freedom, and many other international contingency operations. He was design duties at NATO SHAPE, U.S. CENTCOM, U.S. INDOPACOM, and U.S. CyberCom. So please join me in not only thanking Mr. King for his service to our country, but give him a warm welcome as our keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel King.
Thank you, Michaela.
All right, first question. What's this called up here? What is it? Say it right. It's a clicker. Right? Got to use the clicker. We're going to talk about some things here today. Okay, so Daniel King, thank you very much. Michaela, thank you. President Sousa, thank you so much. Tim, pleasure to meet you today. Professor Eccleston, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak today to all of you, and it's a pleasure for me to be here today. Synopsis from the bio is I've been doing bad things to bad people for a long time, okay, and I'm really good at it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about today is you all and your future, because the future you are going to be emerging into is frankly unpredictable, but we're going to predict it today. So I'm going to help you get there. All right, so as Michaela said, I'm from CISA. If I go through the whole Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, that just rolls off the tongue. And if I call you, that you got to get through that part, Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Hi, it's nice to talk to you. Okay? But what I do want to focus on is in the upper left-hand corner. Yeah. So cyber defense. I just want to throw that out there. That's an interesting term, cyber defense, and trying to sort of bracket that. Risk reduction and resilience is something that we probably have a better grasp on. And then certainly operational collaboration, we all work together in this space. And then frankly, this last part about agency unification, because we work with a lot of very diverse organizations like TD Garden, and our expertise goes from cyber all the way down into emergency communications, chemical security, and physical security. All those things have different sort of attack surfaces. So, before we get started, we were created in 2018. It's about the same time I took off my boots. Actually, they were still in the car when I drove up here to take my first day at IBM. Part of DHS, specifically tasked to reduce risk and improve resiliency of critical infrastructure. So, what's critical infrastructure? Glad you asked. Okay, so the US government defines critical infrastructure into 16 sectors. CISA's got responsibility for about half. But if you kind of look at those, and I won't ask you to read them all, what it really comes down to is that this is the infrastructure that's responsible for everything from coffee makers to capitalism. And when stuff happens in this space, it has an exponential outcome. For your industry, or the industry you're about to enter, our focus from CISA's standpoint is on large venues and on what we consider mass gatherings. Regardless, as a business, TD Garden and other organizations like the Bruins and the Celtics are interested in having a safe and secure event that leaves your patrons with a positive experience, that they had an experience that they want to have again. So this is where we share some alignment in our focus on security, resiliency, and infrastructure. We want a safe and successful event, as we all do. The challenge is, though, risk inside this space has exponential outcomes. And when something bad happens in this space, it's either wicked good or wicked bad. If it's a good event and it goes off successfully, everyone's happy with it. If you have an event like the Boston Marathon and something bad happens, it affects the entire nation. So, we're going to talk about those exponential outcomes. We're going to talk about why we're here at TD Garden today. And I'm going to discuss with you, hopefully, some of the ideas that you all have about this space and where we're going. But I want to give you 3 ideas as we move into this space. So the first one is going to be people, process, and technology, the power of that. The next is going to be let's call it a cliche, the information revolution. Well, it's actually been here for quite a while, and it's continuing in perpetuity. And then lastly, predicting the future, or near enough. Now, my record for predicting the future is 100%. I am always wrong. But I am going to show you a way to kind of get there. So let's start at the top. People, process, and technology. Some of you may have heard of this before. Someone's got a call. That's excellent. People, process, technology was an organizational model that some argue now is dead. And I would say it's actually just was misaligned in terms of how it was utilized. Because I would argue that it was just limited as an organizational model. People, process, and technology is how humankind has addressed every challenge in its history. This image is of a map, a gene map, of how mRNA targets the human genome in cancer treatment. From inventing the wheel to finding a cure for cancer, all in each leveraged people, process, and technology. Think about how we used people, process, and technology to overcome the most recent risk we've all lived through, which has been COVID-19. We adapted our behaviors. Those of us who could, socially distanced. We put on protective measures. We used process in those organizations that could move virtually into how we did business. I would argue with you that if it had happened 5 years earlier, the infrastructure would not have been there to support this. And yet we did it. We did it for years. And then finally, the technology on top of all the process. That infrastructure was remarkable. I had worked with systems prior to that that would have never taken this load. And yet we did it seamlessly. People, process, and technology is powerful because it also creates exponential outcomes. So what's the most powerful factor of the three? People, process, and technology. Audience participation, prepare yourselves. Who thinks it's people as the most powerful portion of that equation? Okay. Who thinks it's process? Who thinks it's technology? Okay. Well, I would tell you that I would agree with all three. The people part of this, I think we're going to save to the end because process is how we've gone about addressing risk and reducing risk, and it's how we adapted our lives to be able to accommodate the risk that we were facing. The technology, mentioned it, the infrastructure was amazing. And frankly, you know, if our first responders and emergency responders were the heroes, it's not me, of COVID, I would tell you that the most valuable player of all this was probably the internet. But the people are where the power is. The people is where the exponentials actually formulate. So, if people are the most important part, how is that happening? Well, frankly, we're wired for it. It's actually what's in our brains that allows us to communicate, collaborate, and cooperate. And that's what process and technology builds on. That's what we see here with this example of mRNA. Technology, process, people working together. So if culture is an outcome of that same wiring, we talk about culture as a focus of today here at this event. If culture is an important outcome to future of sports entertainment, then the people part of this equation is where we need to be focused, not necessarily the technology. So let's take some time and give fair credit for the technology. I'm going to ask another question. Prepare yourselves. Does anybody know what that is? Well, it's kind of labeled. You could say it. It's ARPANET. Anybody ever heard of ARPANET? You have, couple, okay. ARPANET is from whence the internet sprang. This was the original design. These were research locations. There's major universities on here and some military installations. This was the beginning of what would become the internet in 1971. Now, this advances rapidly, but not at a scale that you would recognize. I mean, I certainly was very young when this was launched. I'd never heard of it. But it wasn't necessarily this network that was the important innovation. because this was a circuit switched network. In other words, it used to use phone lines to actually establish network connection. The interesting innovation that comes out of this is the development of packetized information. And I watched all of you on your phones today as you arrived from your 2-hour commute from Rhode Island, all furiously looking at your phones. That technology is absolutely designed to optimize packetized information. This is also where we first saw the beginning of cyber espionage and hacking. In 1986, a great book called The Cuckoo's Egg by Cliff Stoll, if you have a chance to look it up, details the first instance of cyber espionage exploiting the information that was being shared on that network. It all starts here. But let's stay grounded. While the future is truly expanding, it will be measured in the value to its people. So, as I mentioned before, perfect record on predicting the future. But if we're going to project this idea, we have to look at how we got here. All right, look, a graph. So, if you look at this graph, I want you to look at the graph from the left to the right and from the bottom to the top. This is consumer adoption rates for technologies. On the left side, there's some very rudimentary technologies. We're talking about washing machines, we're talking about automobiles. Very gradual adoption. Takes almost 50, 60 years for the washing machine to actually be part of the American household. What's interesting is what happens on the right side of this graph, because those lines get vertical very quickly. What you see there is the beginning of the information revolution. So, in my lifetime, and when I was very little, televisions had tubes. I don't even know if you know what that is, but they're sometimes called Nixie tubes. Then it went to transistors, those were around, and then very rapidly that pivoted from transistors into semiconductors. It's all being developed. I can't say when the information revolution started, but it starts somewhere around the late 60s, 70s. Basically, the torches were lit before I got here. So, let's drill into these last 25 years or so. So we're going to look at it from about 1996 up till today. Now, the beginnings of this thing start with the personal computer actually showing up in homes. That was a great tool, but it really wasn't valuable until it started to talk to other things. So that's where you started to get the beginnings of the internet, and again, it was through telephone dial-up. Then it very rapidly starts to adopt and adapt and morph, and people start using it more and more rapidly. The first wave, personal computing, then followed by portability, cellular communications, the precursors to the phones you have today. Because those were two very different technologies. One was not a computer. Now they are. And so that kind of gets us into the next phase, connectedness, and then followed by convergence. That device you have in front of you is more powerful than the spaceship that went to the moon in the 1960s by a factor of 11. That has 11 times the processing capacity of Apollo 11. And you carry it in your pocket. It is extraordinarily capable and extraordinarily connected. The convergence happens with devices and technologies that start to become all in one. And so your device, which can now scan, your device, which can go to QR codes, your device, which takes pictures and posts selfies and does all these other wonderful things, those were all separate devices, but they've all merged into one. So take that model. Because the technologies we have today were inconceivable when I was your age. This was not here. So I can't predict what's going to be here when you start working with it, but the model will endure. So, we need to kind of go back and get grounded here. Because the next thing that happens is really what's interesting. This is what gets us to quantum. This is what gets us to artificial intelligence. This is what gets us to the next wave. This is fusion energy. And it has to do with device autonomy. Now that's disturbing, and it does raise some ethical questions. But when devices start talking to devices and start making decisions based off that information, the people aren't really in the loop anymore. I don't know what that means yet, but that's a question you all are going to have to face, and you're going to have to make decisions. So let's take that process. Let's take how people adopting these communications, how the process of communication has changed, and how these technologies have enabled everything that we do, and project that into the future. The platforms of tomorrow will be convenient. They'll be interconnected and they will be seamless. They'll also have lots of LEDs. Okay? So this is actually a picture of a drone race from the Drone Racing League. If you haven't watched one of these things, you need to, because you're actually put within the drone as it races at pretty close to 100 miles an hour. It is an astounding experience. And I can't imagine what that would do, what that would look like if I was doing it with VR. But the pilots are using VR, and they're reacting. Again, people, process, technology. The content will be highly personalized. Highly personalized. It will be gamified, interactive, and hyper-connected. So how can I say that with such confidence? Because there's value in each of those elements now, and they will converge. The entertainment experience will be constructed around the user, the people part. Today, the utility of personal devices is unquestionable. It enables efficiency, convenience, and frankly, profitability. On a related front, it's rapidly becoming a means of cryptographically assured identity. Our digital identity enables our lives, for good or bad. The future will be defined by personalized content, and to that identity, focused upon individual experiences and how the customer felt throughout the experience. It is clear that the innovations of the 1960s seem to have been foundational, but now we're in a place where those technologies are emerging faster than we can recognize the impact they're having. I mentioned feelings, how the customer felt. What do feelings have to do with any of this? Oh, actually, that's the fuel for the rocket sled. People technologically within an immersive sports entertainment experience is where I believe your industry is heading. But there's risk here, and we can see it now. The risk is in trading security for convenience or profitability. And we all do it. We'll continue to do it until we get burned badly. According to IBM, my old alma mater, about $4.3 million is the cost of a data breach today. In some industries, as high as 10. Those industries where it's 10 million per instance are where the information is highly personalized. Think about how personal your information will be to an enterprise that's providing with individualized experience content. It's going to be expensive when things go wrong. Loss of reputation and market share impacts on earnings above and beyond that 10 million. Because on top of all of the bad stuff, the core loss here is trust in the organization that is responsible for your safety and security. HelpNet data, trust index, they played with this back in 2018. I have not seen a subsequent study, but I think it's instructive because back in 2018, consumers were choosing security over convenience. The model here was a free application of entertainment value, but without necessarily transparency to how much you were giving up in terms of your personal information. Back in 2018, they could see that there was a correlation there, that consumers were averse to that prospect, yet we see it continue today. Trust is at the core of all commerce. It is the marketplace. It is assessed with every transaction. And we're wet-wired for that too. Ability, benevolence, integrity, all these things. They're human assessments, human emotions, and they've been the same for all human market transactions since it all started. Think of what would be required to create highly personalized content and what you will need to know about your customer in the future. Think also what would happen if that data got stolen. That's what the healthcare industry is dealing with today. To create a sports and entertainment industry for tomorrow, you're going to need to know your customer intimately. And with intimate relationships come trust. And an evaluation of that relationship at every transaction. So I challenge you to build a future of sports entertainment securely. Earn the trust and loyalty of your customer. Protect them. You already know this. Safety and security are part and priority for every organization in this space. That's what makes a successful sporting event, is that people are safe, secure, and have a good time. Extend that commitment into the digital future, what you're going to build, what you're going to create. If you build it securely, they will come and they will stay. It's difficult, but that's where you need to go. All right, I got time for questions. Anybody? Please, ma'am.
Liz?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. I had a question about TikTok. I know that the government has made a move to make sure that all government employees take it off their phone. And I know it's a very popular platform for social media. So just curious on what your thinking is on that.
Understood. Okay, so yes, there was actually for many weeks, months now, there has certainly been risk associated with the use of TikTok on government devices. And I mean government, I mean federal, and in some cases states have made these decisions. There's a couple of questions here, and this is really becomes just a raise of hands. How many of you actually read the terms of conditions when you signed up for TikTok? You did. Excellent. Excellent. That's one. All right. So here's the challenge. There is a tremendous amount of information capability within the devices that you use. Okay. That device is optimized to communicate and connect and do everything that is possible to do it with. It is also designed to integrate. There is information that your applications are sending back to the creators of those applications, the hosts of those applications, and whatever they do with that data is up to them because that was within the terms and conditions. So the federal government has determined that TikTok, as a foreign-owned corporation that transacts that data to foreign sources, is a risk to the security of the organizations and the devices and the personnel. And because of that, the federal government has said, no, you can't have that on your device. Frankly, it's a federal device. I don't use my phone for anything but work. I don't really need to have that on there. But that's not my decision. That's my government device. I have other applications personally, but when I have it on my personal device, that's my personal risk. And I accept that. So I'm not sure that gave you the answer you wanted, but I will tell you that the federal government has clearly said no application from TikTok on a government device. Next question. Sir.
What's your opinion on SB 800 CMMC? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What's your opinion on NIS 171 from the SB 800 and the CMMC guideline that's being developed by the federal government? Do you feel that that's something that's going to be applied just to government work, or do you feel that it's going to be coming into the commercial space soon? And when do you think it will be finalized? Because it's been in the works for quite some time now.
How many in here have ever read a NIST publication? Good. Okay, so are they easy to get through? Are they specific and detailed? Absolutely. There's a lot of work that goes into them. And part of our responsibility, I work with NIST as well. Work very closely with NIST, like NIST email addresses and stuff. So what these two frameworks and these designs are referencing is a cybersecurity maturity model and assessing where organizations are on a journey in cybersecurity towards being more aware of risk and improving resiliency. Now, right now, the federal government is applying these models and frameworks to federal networks because it is where our responsibility lay. As a U.S. taxpayer, you would want us to be very focused on providing the most secure infrastructure we can for federal networks. The question really becomes is, well, if the federal government's doing it, what's being done in the private sector? And that becomes a business decision. That's kind of what I was talking about. Because, I certainly can get a direct order from my higher ups that said, you will do this. You will not have TikTok on your phone. You will change your network and it will be configured like this. Roger that. I will do that. But as a private entity, like with IBM, they don't really have that level of responsibility. Now, if you work for the financial services sector, they kind of get it. And some of the most mature network infrastructure architectures exist within financial services. There's probably also a corollary in there with regard to regulation. I'm not going to say that one caused the other, but there's a relationship in there. On the other side of this, I would say that this is part of the argument that my director is making now, that we have unfortunately become accepting and we allow for organizations to put our information at risk because of insecure practices, and that the market is failing us in terms of dissuading that activity. This is something you're all going to have to deal with as you move into this space. What is that threshold of maturity that will allow you to say, I'm willing to do business with this company? And corporations, when I was with IBM, corporations were working with us all the time. When you went into a contract, as I was with IBM, all of a sudden legal language started showing up inside of contracts that specified the level of integrity of the networks that you were going to be interacting your customers' data with. Well, that caused costs. This is changing incredibly quickly. And this is the environment you're going to have to get into. But it all boils back down to risk. Risk to the customer, risk to the corporation. So to answer your question, I don't know. However, this is, as to use another cliche, the way forward. We're all going to have to up our game in this space because the bad guys are not going to wait. And they'll take advantage of this at every opportunity. Any other questions? Sir.
Hold on. Noah,
Wait for the mic.
hold on. Hold on now. Thank you.
So like I'll admit I'm good, but also like bad with technology. For like companies and positions that we work with where they don't give us a work device and they allow us to access systems on our personal devices, what's
yeah.
the best way to be the most secure when accessing that data?
So that's a great question. All right, did everybody kind of get that? Is that if the organization you're working with doesn't necessarily have the resources to provide you with a corporate-owned device, that you have to use your own personal device? Now, there are certainly ways to approach that from a enterprise standpoint and something called bring your own device and segmentation and isolation and containers and all ways to do that, but in many cases, that's actually more cost. And so we do end up in these conditions where someone's asking us to, interact with their network on our personal devices, and unfortunately, there's no guarantee that your device is clean. And you'll be inheriting risk based on the user. So the challenge here is that you can do a lot with policy and governance before you actually start to buy any solutioning from a technological standpoint. I come back to process and people because that's not particularly the expensive part of this. Technologies can be, and certainly overhead for people being hired, there's a lot of resources there. But in terms of behaviors and process and policy and governance, you can stipulate what is necessary for you to be able to log on to a system. So in this case, I would say something like multi-factor authentication would be important. So instead of just saying, okay, just go ahead and log on here and make a password and you're in. Say, actually, you know what, let's put another layer on this and put multi-factor on that. So now we can validate that it is actually you and your password hasn't been stolen. Unfortunately, I deal a lot with, not unfortunately, but it's my privilege to work with municipalities across the Commonwealth and in other states across New England. And these organizations are taking care of towns and their citizens on very limited budgets. And so they don't necessarily have options technologically. And this is part of what we help them to do, is to create policies that will allow them to be able to reduce risk because they don't have many options. Small to medium businesses, absolutely in the same place.
Question here.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I was wondering what was your most beneficial internship or job that helped you prepare for this industry?
Okay, so this is a great question. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. I have worked in and around cyber for probably 25 years. But it's a weird journey because, again, these technologies weren't around when I first started. I think the important thing for everyone in this room is to recognize that, one, we're all going to have a capacity to protect ourselves in this technologically enabled future. We're all going to have a better understanding of where the risk is in this space, and we're all going to need to understand how we have to configure our home routers. I'm sorry, it doesn't come out of the box secure. All right, you're going to have to figure this out. But what was interesting was the first PCs started to emerge when I was a kid, and my parents gave me one for Christmas. And back then, there really was only one language that was available to a PC, and that was called BASIC. And I started writing programs, and I started really having a lot of fun, and my dad took it away because he said there was no money in it. Yeah, I hold that over him now. I do. But what's interesting about this is that I clearly had an aptitude as a child for this kind of work, for mathematics, for other things. And even though my parents said, you're not going to do that, you're going to go do something else that we all recognize, and I ended up joining the military and doing nothing that they recognized. But the point being is that it kept coming back to find me. And regardless of what I did in the military, this thing always kept coming back. And all of a sudden in 2000, I'm in a very small room with a bunch of people, and we're looking at a type of remote access Trojan, one of the first ones that ever came out. I won't share the name with you because it's probably not politically correct. But nevertheless, again, this thing came back and found me. I was not doing cyber back then, but somehow, somewhere, somebody figured out that, well, that guy knew something, so get him in here. You're going to figure it out. That's my point. This aptitude is something we're all going to need to develop, and the only thing that defines the people who are successful in this space is that. It's not the degrees. It's not the certifications. It's not the fact that you work for IBM or for the U.S. government. It's the aptitude and the curiosity. I've worked with, back when I was still in uniform, one of the most talented, let's call them hackers, that I used to work with was a 23-year-old sergeant who did not want to get promoted because she loved what she was doing so much. Sitting next to her was a 27-year-old with 2 PhDs in applied mathematics who also didn't want to do anything else but what they were doing. This is an inspiring space for many people because it's boundless in its potential. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if I have enough time for one last question, but if we do, I'll take it. Any other questions?
Here we go.
Please, sir.
I understand that this is kind of very broad,
Go ahead.
and it's the general question of cyber in general, but you mentioned before about the average cost per data breach, and my question to you is just, there are a lot of risk frameworks that deal in monetary loss. Do you believe that there's a better way to approach talking to upper management, things like that, about these in other ways than just monetary, or do you believe monetary is the most effective way to communicate to them?
So this is what I used to actually do at IBM, was to have these conversations with board members. Because that's what boards do. Boards look at risk, and that's the responsibility of the board. And if the board cares about something, everybody cares about it, okay? You have to look at the monetary impact because this is the nature of business. Risk is part of every business. It's either good risk or bad risk. It's just risk. The change that's happening and happening very rapidly, and the time that I started with IBM to the time I left, it already happened because I used to ask when I had CIOs and CISOs in my org, or would come and we would talk to them, I would ask, how many of you brief your board? And when I first started out, that may have been maybe 10%. I would get someone say, yeah, I briefed the board this year, I do it annually. By the time I left, it was quarterly, and it was happening frequently at well over 65, 75% of the people I spoke with. This change is happening culturally, and it has to. Cyber risk is like every other kind of business risk. It is a risk. It needs to be managed. And yes, you can ascribe, projected costs to it, but the challenge here, and this is really the hard part, The old business model was that you did good for your community and your customer over time. You built up a repository of reputational trust. And when something bad happened, you could pull that. You could make a withdrawal on that organizational trust, that reservoir. And it would manifest over time, and you would recover, and there would be a crisis, and you would get back to business quickly. The difference in this space is the speed at onset. You can go from having a normal day to a catastrophic network-related incident in seconds. You may not even know it for days what's happened. And the challenge here in this space is the rapidity of onset and then the cost of remediation. Because there are decisions that are made when the configuration of the network that you've had to make hard choices between what we can do, what we can't do, and what risk we're willing to accept. Watch the insurance companies, because what you're seeing now is it's getting increasingly difficult to get underwriting for cyber risk. And when the insurers walk away, that is a huge red flag. And it goes back to your question about CMMC. We are going to have to onboard this responsibility. We're going to have to take this onto our shoulders, and we're going to have to build our organizations to not only be resilient as an organization and be profitable, but to be cyber resilient. And that also parallels into our communities and everything we do. And when was the last time anybody walked into a bank to cash a check? At some point, everyone in this room walked out of the bank for the last time. We didn't know it, but that's the speed of this. And we are absolutely on this rocket sled. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great day. Thank you, man. I don't know who needs that.
Thank you so much. Great questions, by the way. Thought-provoking presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, I know we have a very busy schedule ahead, but we're just going to take a moment, a 15-minute break, so you guys can get up, get a refreshment, use the restrooms if you need to, and then come on back a little after 11 o'clock so we can proceed with our first panel, Cyber Threats and Security for Sports, Entertainment Venues, and Events. Thank you. All right, everyone, if you are still here in the room, if you could just please take your seats. We're going to jump in with our first of two panels here today. So once again, if you're here, just please take your seats. We're going to get rolling as the rest of the students and staff start to make their way back in. Now, in his presentation, Mr. King shared with us his insight on cybersecurity from a national perspective, and his discussion on the role of the federal government in monitoring cybersecurity and protecting the U.S. from a devastating cyber attack provides us with a deeper understanding of the many challenges cyber threats present to large-scale events as we transition into our first panel. As you can see, we've already got everyone in place. Cyber Threats and Security for Sports, Entertainment, Venues, and Events. Now, leading today's first panel is Peter Reed, Assistant Professor, Department of Engineering and Computer Science, College of Engineering and Design at Johnson & Wales University. And after a lengthy career in both the U.S. Navy and the private sector, Professor Reed began teaching at JWU in 2017 as an adjunct professor. He joined the JWU IT team in 2018 as the Director of IT Infrastructure, and in 2022 accepted a full-time faculty role and is working with other faculty to keep JWU programs current in the ever-changing world of cybersecurity. So please help me in welcoming Peter and the rest of our panel. Over to you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Michaela. So let me start by introducing the rest of the panel. We have, starting here on my right, Douglas Tondro. He's a assistant professor at Johnson & Wales University, along with me. Next, we have Josh Carley. Josh is the Vice President of Technology for TD Garden and the Boston Bruins. Over here on the end, Anthony Chavez. He is also an assistant professor at Johnson & Wales University. So guys, to get started today, I'd like to kick this off just talking about why is cybersecurity important for sports and entertainment? I mean, when I talk with my friends and somebody says, hey, how do you think the Bruins are going to do in the playoffs this year? Nobody's talking about, well, I mean, they got the best cyber defense in the conference. I think they're going to go really far. So why is this important to the Bruins, to the Celtics, to other teams and organizations? Josh, you want to start us off?
Great. All right. So hi, everybody. Hi, everybody in the corner. I feel like I don't want you to feel like we're ignoring you. You guys are cool too. First of all, this is super cool. This is great. I would like to, and I'm not going to try to talk over anybody, but if you've got questions, this is very interactive. We want to know what you're thinking, what you're doing, how we can help you figure out what's going on. That said, to your point, cybersecurity is not sexy. It's not. No. There's no way around it. It can look dull. It can feel monotonous. It can be this monolith in the desert that nobody knows what the hell that thing is, right? But it is critically important to the success of an organization. So it's people like you who are going into that realm who are going to make sure that organizations like the Boston Bruins, like the Celtics, can continue to be successful without having to think about it. Because what we do is behind the scenes. It's not necessarily in front of the camera. We're making things happen so that they can do their jobs, and that's the key. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because the moment that we forget that we're responsible for the infrastructure that allows these teams to be successful is one of the moments that we've failed. So never ever forget that, especially when you're feeling like, wow, nobody really, I'm not getting my due, right? I'm not feeling as important as I think I am. Nobody's high-fiving me in the hallway. Right? It's because the cybersecurity you're providing is allowing them to do their jobs.
Great. Who are these threats? Who's the biggest threat to organizations like yourself? Is it individuals that are just trying to see what they can do?
It's every single person sitting in the seat.
I'm sorry.
It's every single person sitting in a seat. Right? I have to look at it like if you're sitting in a seat in an arena, you're trying to put bad things on the Jumbotron, right? So it's my responsibility to keep you from doing that. And there's something that Mr. King said earlier about this confluence of how we interact with security and technology. It's that we have to protect ourselves as an organization from you. And it's not that we don't like you. We want you here. We want you in those seats. But we have to protect our organizations from somebody doing something dumb. So how we do that, we'll get into that. But really, that's what it comes down to, is you've got people who want to access our private data. You have people who want to monetize their own businesses off of it. Then you got people who just want to have a little bit of cyber fun.
Sure. Yeah. Doug and Anthony, I know you guys both do consulting on the side as well. What are you seeing out there with your clients?
For the most part, I think, go back to what Josh said, the human firewall is the best firewall you can have out there. Because you're protecting yourself. If I'm a network, all you guys are my enemies. Everyone in this room is my enemy. I'm looking at you like, you're going to download malware. You're going to try to access my network. You're going to try to get the guest network. You're going to try to get more bandwidth. You're going to try to bridge connections. What are you trying to do? You don't know what you're doing, or necessarily, maybe you do, and I'm the risk. So like, as a cybersecurity professional, I think probably assessing the risk, going back to what Mr. King said earlier, assessing the risk and that human firewall and being able to judge the usability versus security aspect is going to be huge, because as we increase our usability, especially here in the Garden, like I wouldn't want players or individuals here in the Garden worried about their safety and their personal PII out there, because that inhibits them from doing their job. Same thing it would do at your companies that you work for. You don't want that stuff being out there, being put out in the world, because now you're more worried about, is my life secure, not so much as opposed to, am I doing my job? Right. So to keep you on task, keep those things secure, and I always tell my students, that cybersecurity is like the CIA. You never know our successes. You only hear about our failures, right? So because we mess up, like we made a joke a couple minutes ago, that guy at Facebook last year, he had a rough day. Like no one praised him the other 400 whatever days he was doing his job excellent. That one day they went down, he was the bad guy.
Yeah. Human firewall, I like that.
Yeah.
Doug, do you want to add?
Yeah, for me, I always say, I'm a big sports fan, and I always look at kind of how you can get an edge, right? And I think that's what a lot of us try to think about when you look at, you want to get access to the data. Is Tatum playing tonight? Is Brown playing, right? Because that competitive edge can essentially help you. Back to the Jumbotron. What kind of technology does the Jumbotron use? Is it a Bluetooth technology? And what kind of cellular devices are entering into that environment? And earlier, I think most of you heard that our phones are more powerful than the ship that went to the moon, right? So when you have that, you can actually scan the Celtics network and make changes. And if I'm a Celtics fan, it's playoffs. I bet $1 million. It's a tie game. I could add an extra point to the scoreboard. Of course I'm going to try.
Please
to
don't do that.
I'm trying to win. Because I walk out a happy person, and if they catch me later, it is what it is. So I do think, to me, the most important thing is being aware of who's coming in and out, right? Monitoring essentially what's happening, because you're never going to be bulletproof, right? I can say, for me in my house, everything's configured down to the amount of bandwidth my kids have access to. I have AI cameras. The moment they enter the house, I know they're there. I have firewalls everywhere. Everything is configured to the point, right? When you come in, everyone's on my guest network. They get 10 megabytes for their devices. So they always say, you know what, I'm not coming to this guy's house because this network's terrible, right? Because you kind of have to protect yourself from everything that's happening. And most importantly, right, how do I block things like my Wi-Fi access so people can't see my SSIDs and know how to, physically scan my network and connect to my environment? So it's really about monitoring and seeing what others can see and thinking about ways in terms of how you protect yourself. I always alluded to, when I walk in the classroom, the first thing I always think about, what am I going to do if an event was to occur? How do I protect my students? So I always come up with a game plan. If this happens, some of my students know, I start, we're going to attack them or we're jumping out the window. These are our escape plans. So always think about how to protect and monitor what's happening, so to speak.
Great. All right, thanks. So what about for the individual athletes, for the celebrities? It seems like everybody, even the punter on a football team's got their own Instagram channel, with millions of followers. What kind of threats do they face that we don't face with our own personal accounts, and what can they do to protect themselves out there? Whoever's
public scrutiny. Yeah. Like you're a public figure. I don't have social media myself, so I don't know how you guys feel about it. I did away with it a while back, set it to the side. But that public scrutiny works. Everyone's on you constantly. We talked about it in our pregame when we were doing this a couple weeks back. Mm-hmm. Kevin Durant has an entire separate account that he just dogs people on. And he has his actual Kevin Durant account. But then if he wants to go and troll you, he goes on a separate account. And those things, that's critical because sometimes their publicist not as always monitoring those accounts. What if it's a lesser named athlete who doesn't have a publicist or IT manager and they're using real passwords and real things? They still make a lot of money, and usually that's what's incentivizing the attackers, and the vector they're coming at is money in the end, like money or to defame you or shame you or look at Kevin Hart, look at these high-profile entertainers and how they've been blackmailed and things of that sort. Privacy is not private if you're on social media and if you're a public figure of any site, politics, sports, anything. Privacy's out the window. You should not think you have an inkling privacy or how did they figure this out if you're on social media. You should be constantly on guard. I should take that back. You shouldn't say on guard. You should be constantly aware that what I put into the world may not ever come back to me. Like just because I delete it doesn't mean it's gone forever. It's still there. It's very much can be retrieved.
For me, I'll ask this question. Who here has social media of some sort? All right. Who here puts their name on their social media? All right. Guess what? If I'm a hacker, I love you guys. Right? Why? I can search for your name. Once I search for your name, I can put it in some tool. I can find your address. I can learn who your parents are. From there, I can look at their net worth, see what they do for a living. Right? I can hack you, blackmail you, and take everything I need from you, essentially. Right? That's the first step when I'm thinking of how to hack individuals. Right? I always tell my kids the most important thing you do when you have a social media account is use a fake name or use some kind of fictitious name. The NSA will tell you the same thing. Never put your name or your personal information on any social media platform, because once I have that, then you already given me the first step in terms of what I need to get access to. So I wouldn't say, don't have it. Unfortunately, I'm one that don't have social media, right? And in business, right, business don't flourish now without social media, essentially, because that's what marketing is now. That's how you kind of get your stuff out there. So I always say, right, the whole catfishing thing that we thought was a bad idea back in the days, it's always smart to have a fictitious name in your social media, because then it makes it that much harder for me to identify and know who exactly you are, because now that hashtag or that name that I'm looking for doesn't really reveal anything about you. So my advice is, if you have social media, don't put personal information on it. Use fictitious names, use fake things that won't let people know exactly who you are. So it's not as easy to find exactly who you are, so to speak.
In sports and entertainment, though, they don't have that option, because if you're trying to get your name and your personality and you get yourself out there, you have to use your real name. So, Josh, do you get involved with the with the teammates, with the sports personalities and their social media?
I don't. I had a conversation with Tuukka Rask the other day, and Tuukka Rask was a retired goaltender for the Boston Bruins. Super nice guy. If you ever have a chance to meet him, he's super cool. Just having a conversation with him about his social media presence. What exactly does he do? My first question to him was, are you taught as an up-and-comer in the leagues, are you taught how to manage your social media? Are you taught how to manage your online identity? So I will pose this question to you. When you signed up for Instagram or Facebook, did you get a manual for how to use it? No, right? Neither did they. And they've got millions upon millions of dollars. They're very young, don't know how to use it. They've been thrust into the media spotlight, and now they're being asked to be a persona on the internet that somehow is going to connect with the fan in order to drive engagement. How the hell are you supposed to do that without exposing yourself? So he said, listen, he goes, what most athletes rely on are their management teams, their agents, their families, and their teams to kind of help educate them about how to use social media effectively. Because at the end of the day, the very last thing you want to do is put something out there that's going to ruin your brand. Because you may play for the Bruins today, but your playing career will eventually be over. What are you going to do with your life once that's done? It's all about what your personal brand becomes. So to his point, nothing's ever deleted off the internet. So you have to be very careful about what you're putting out on social media and how you're using it. So I asked him, I'm like, have you ever been hacked? And he's like, no, I haven't, but that's because I'm not on social media. At the end of the day, that's the only way to protect yourselves from any sort of nefarious whatnottery is by just not being there.
Yeah.
But whose ego can handle that?
Yeah.
Also, one last point, to kind of add on to what Doug said. How many people have ever answered this question? Pet's first name. Answer that question online. Pet's first name.
Yeah.
First elementary school.
Yeah.
All that stuff. All that
Last
stuff
maiden
is
name.
on your social profile.
Yeah.
It's on your Facebook. Oh, look, here's us in 19. Well, maybe I'm gonna date myself. I'm gonna stop. Here's us in 2000 something, right? And here's my little dog Spot.
Yeah.
Spot's first name. Let me reset your password. Here's Spot. I have that now. You went to XYZ elementary school. I have that now. Why are we still using, and this is a problem I have with cybersecurity as a whole, why are we still using personal questions when the answers are right next to us on social media?
Yeah.
That's cheating. I'm a professor, so that's flat out cheating. And I was in the Army, so if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So it kind of works both ways. Like if you're a hacker, that's an easy win. Like I'm just gonna scrub and grab your data, and now I have all the answers. I reset your password. I might have only got your Netflix today. Tomorrow I might have your bank account.
Right.
The day after that, I might have the insurance information to your house, billing false claims, then getting a check to myself, and then you don't know because all you get is that increased house payment. Well, why is my house payment larger? Because your insurance is in your house payment. That's why.
Right.
So those are just things I want to add on.
Yeah, no, that's good. I cringe whenever I see people answering those quizzes online. I'm
Yeah, I
like,
lie.
Why don't you just
I
post
flat
your
out lie.
password?
Just-
You know?
My first dog's name, Jupiter.
So I think we're all probably constantly seeing articles, online or on the news or what have you about hacks and bots and online fraud and things like that. What do organizations like the Bruins, the Celtics, or other venues, what can they do to protect themselves, to ensure that their online presence, that their platforms are trustworthy, and that their customers can interact with them securely?
I think it comes down to the people that you have working in your organization to monitor and police that. At the end of the day, technology is only as good as the people who are using it. So if you have a social media presence, so let's take the Bruins, for example. There are a cadre of folks who work in the media department for the Bruins, and they're responsible for not only making sure that the public sees that facing information, but protects the brand from nefarious actors. So there are certain technological things you can do to prevent bots from happening, yes, if you work for Twitter. But if you don't, you're beholden to their security practices. You're beholden to their processes. So you as a business owner, right, you as a technologist in those spaces, you have to have the right people around you to make the decisions in order to go out and look for those things. What are you looking for? How do you assess it? What kind of risk is there? How do you mitigate it? And what did Mr. King call it? Wet wired? right? I love that. I'm going to use that. It's that wet wiring inside of our brains of the people that are on the ground here in order to prevent those things.
Yeah, for me, for most organizations, I try to really set up ways that I can monitor what's happening. So for companies that I work with, I rely a lot on YubiKeys, which is a form of MFA that you could set that I have on all my devices. And what that essentially does is it tracks every time someone logs into the system, sends it back to the server. It uses some kind of fingerprint or some kind of facial recognition of some sort, right? Some people haven't gotten comfortable with that, like, oh, my face is being stored. That's a huge violation. So I'm big into really setting up ways to monitor exactly what's happening. And most importantly, I try to apply the highest level of encryption to all of my devices. So everything I have from my phone to my computers to my network is all fully encrypted. So in the event that someone was to capture any of my clients' information, I wouldn't really worry about it, because unless you have 30,000 years to decrypt my encryption, it's really not going to happen. And the monitoring tools also allow me to know who's coming in and who's coming out. So if a breach does happen and I need to do an investigation after the fact, I can kind of go through and say, here's who did it, when it happened, and we can kind of tailor it down to exactly what's happening. So for me, it's a lot of MFA, encryption, and the right monitoring tools to know who's coming in and out, so to speak.
Great. Anthony?
Physical security, like in the end, physical security is the top line security. Like we can talk about all the digital and the honeypots and monitoring logs and all that, but if I take your device, if I get your phone from you right now, give me a computer and give me 45 minutes. And I'm gonna have what I want probably from your phone if it's not fully encrypted. Depending on the encryption it has on it, I still might have it, it's gonna take me a little longer. So physical security, going through those things and checking on things as individuals, as corporations, locking doors, man traps, things of that nature, helps reduce risk overall to these, and it reduces the attack surface for these threat actors. And as you do those and you reduce your risk, and I believe you asked a question earlier to Mr. King, and we were talking about it, how does cybersecurity convey itself to a business? I think there was a question out there, I believe. Cybersecurity doesn't give you a monetary value. It's not a revenue earner. That's the biggest thing about cybersecurity. Like, I've been in a situation where, like, why are you here? I'm like, well, if I'm not here, I don't know. Like, in my career. But now I can explain, like, I'm here because I conduct cybersecurity research. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you. I reduced your overall insurance budget by 45% in cyber risk. I did this, I did that. While I might not be generating revenue, I am providing revenue savings in the end. So it affects the bottom line, and I think it was you that asked earlier, it affects the bottom line, and monetary will always get, especially when you're working that top-down infrastructure where your leaders have to lead, that's what grabs their attention. You start talking about the bottom line, and you say, hey, I'm saving you X, and they're like, oh, well, you keep saving me X, and you keep doing a great job making more money. And then that goes on, and that goes from digital security, physical security, and so forth and so on.
Right.
And I'll also add for SMBs, because I know that's a big elephant in the room. They always feel like financially they can't afford really the cyber protection that's out there. And there's a lot of free tools that are there, right? A lot of it's just doing research, looking at, what can I use to protect my DNS, which is, the name of your company or your domain name. How do you protect that DNS, right? There's various companies out there and tools that are out there that the federal government actually provides online that people can use for free. So I would say really doing research. Again, encryption's free for the most part, right? If you have a Windows or a Mac or a Linux environment, a lot of those encryption methods come built in to those tools. So I always say for SMBs, it's really looking at, all right, what frameworks can I use to protect my business? What does the federal government provide in terms of protection that I can easily access to protect my company? And how do I apply that to my business to ensure that I'm at least meeting, the level 1 layer of protection, so to speak? Yes. Question? I'm sorry.
Yep. Okay. What about online ticket purchases? There was a lot in the news recently with the Taylor Swift concert. Anytime tickets go on sale for a big event, all the tickets are bought up by bots, and the regular people like the rest of us never have a chance to buy tickets. We have to buy them, on the second market, the aftermarket, and pay huge markups. Is there anything that can be done to protect against that or to deal with that?
Non-repudiation, I would start there. But there's no way to actually stop it. Like, it's just capitalism at its best, in all honesty. Like, if I could do it, I would do it. Like I probably can. I just don't have the time. But like it's just good capitalism. The only way I can think you stop it as a whole would be to limit the amount of tickets that go out in person. So then you have to pick up X amount of tickets in person, X, Y, Z. So the bot technically can't have that digital way in. Like, hey, we're gonna sell these amount of tickets in person. You bring cash or card, and you sell it. Outside, the bots are here. The bots are here to stay. Like gaming bots. I got killed by some gaming bot the other day. I was so upset. I was like, there's no way you're that good.
Josh, is there anything the Garden or the Bruins are looking into to deal with that?
Nope.
No.
It's not. It's not going away.
So we're stuck. Better bots. Get your own bots.
I'm not being facetious when I say this. That the only way it's going to change is regulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for those there are some in this room who are going to hate the idea of government overreach, but seriously, that's the only way something like this is going to get fixed. Because at the end of the day, our job as an entertainment provider is to sell tickets. And not to distill it down too far, but do we care who buys them?
Right. Yeah. Doug, do you have anything to add?
And I'll add on to what he says. That's the irony of capitalism, right? Most of us go to college. Our goal is to make money, get that job, and be the best in our career. So if we can afford the $10,000 ticket, we're going to pay the $10,000 for it. If I'm going to sell it back to you for $40,000 and you're going to buy it, then I'm going to sell it. And that's what happened with the Taylor Swift ticket system. And it's unfortunate. To me, the way you do fix it is regulation and putting a timer on the database where, you know, you have to wait at least 5 to 10 minutes to buy it. So that would kind of eliminate a lot of what the bots can do and to humanize the transactions. And I think once you do a lot of humanization within the systems, then you start to see the bots fade away, so to speak.
Okay. One last topic before we open it up to questions. I think we've seen a trend in the industry of increased technology use and technology dependency, both to support the in-game experience, the enjoyment of the fans at home and in the stadium, but also in managing the game itself. I know tennis is using an AI line judge now. Major League Baseball is experimenting with an AI strike zone in the minors. How do you see that trend continuing in the years to come? And a big question for you, are we going to see the glow puck come back?
Okay, so back in the 90s, a little bit of history here. Back in the 90s, Fox Sports had the rights to the NHL games. And what they decided to do to make it a little more entertaining was to make the puck on the ice glow. So you're seeing like this little pink or green dot that's floating around. Our cats loved it, right? But the consumer did not. For those of us who are hockey purists, we're like, what the bleep is this bleep? This is ridiculous. Pissed off and swollen beyond all recognition, right? Is that coming back? Hell no.
Right.
It cannot, or there will be riots. But to his point though, how is technology going to augment the fan experience? Let's put it to you this way. As a deliverer of an entertainment service, my biggest competitor is your refrigerator, your bathroom, the ability for you to get in and out of your garage without having to wait in lines to do it. Because if I'm going to charge you $300 for a ticket, and you're going to pay $60 for parking, and you're going to pay $20 for a beer, and you're going to wait in line to relieve yourself of said beer, right? The value on the ice or the court has to match the money you're spending. The difficult part is when it doesn't. What if the team sucks? Right? So now I have to deliver you an in-game experience that makes you want to come back and spend that money. That's where technology comes into play. Augmented reality, virtual reality, ways to entertain you while being here. And a perfect example of that is we have one of the best sports museums in the world, in my opinion. And it's on level 5 or 6, both. It's okay, there we go. It's rad. And you can walk through and you can see all of the championship rings and you can see, you know, the women's NWSL leagues, the jerseys. It is super, super cool. It's those kinds of offerings that we're going to keep people interested when, you know what, God forbid the Bruins are down by 7 goals, right?
Never
so,
happens.
God forbid, right?
Yeah.
That said, it's that technological interface that's going to give you that value that's going to make you want to come back next time. It's going to make our season ticket holders want to purchase more. It's going to make those folks want to get to different levels of the arena. So that's how we do it.
Great. Doug and Anthony, anything to add on that before we take questions?
I will say I vacationed one time overseas, and this before we started renovating all the theaters here in America, and I realized they had reclining chairs and waiters in the movie theater. And I could see those type of technologies and interaction with other technologies in the stadium just being a huge asset, just like Josh said, to the overall in-game experience. Because if I'm watching the game and we're down by 20, I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay,
I'm done.
like this is fun, not anymore. But if there's something I'm still doing, I'm still in a comfortable seat, I'm getting drinks, I'm getting food, I'm being well kept and things of that sort, and maybe I have an interactive thing on the phone. Like NASCAR has interactive radio calls you can listen to at the NASCAR game, the NASCAR race. So all those things go into kind of the experience as he talked about. And as long as you can enhance that experience, even when you're losing, the experience is enhanced to a point that I want to return and give you my money.
Yeah, AI is the future. I can say in Rhode Island right now we're investing in AI cameras where we can know everything that's happening. We can track things in real time. If you go to the movie theaters, if AI doesn't get implemented soon, the reclining chairs get boring, right? God forbid, two Celtics are losing. I want to keep my kids entertained. I don't want them running around crying. I gotta go to the bathroom. This is so boring, right? So I think if you don't take the technology, implement it in a way to monetize it, and give that fan an experience that's better than their 80-inch screen, reclining chair, massage bed at home, then why am I going to come? So I do think it's the future, and we just have to adopt it.
Great. All right. With that, I think we'll open up to any questions that people might have.
Questions?
Yes. Wait for the mic. Yeah.
As talking about the different implementations of the second security methods, such as the questions and answers, and then the step above it is the multi-factor. What about your takes on implementing the different types of biometrics that are involved right now?
From a fan experience, it gets scary. If you look at what Madison Square Garden just did and how much the lawsuits have just impacted their business, we have to make sure that what we are putting out to the public is ready to receive. I don't know if we're there with facial recognition yet. I think there's a lot of people who are still very turned off by that. But fingerprints, I think we're used to, right? So it just depends on what the public's ready to do. At the same time, though, we've got to ensure that the technology that's going to allow us to provide that guest experience interfaces with biometric capability on the market. So it's very much like we're waiting to see what exactly is going to be the fallout at MSG. How exactly is the public going to look at that? Because yes, we want to make this, at the end of the day, here's what we want you to do. We want you to park your car. We want the system to know where your seats are. We want the elevator to automatically show up and take you there. We don't want you to wait in line for security. We want you to just walk right in and have a good time, right? In this day and age of physical and digital security, that's extremely difficult to implement. But the only way to do it is biometrics. I'm not sure if we're ready to implement yet.
Yeah, I think.
And I'll add, there's a lot of legal issues, right? You don't want to be coming to the game where you're like, oh man, I got a warrant. I'm going to go to jail, so to speak.
Right.
Because then you're like, then you're going to draw away certain crowd from coming in. So I do think we do have to have regulations where things like that can't be used against people, so to speak. And the moment you scan your fingerprints or your face, it's deleted after the fact, and it's not used for malicious intent or to go to the judge to prosecute you, so to speak. So I do think a lot of those things we have to think through, and those are things you guys are responsible for, so to speak, because I plan on being in Florida in 30 years, so yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, I think it's really comes down to trust. You can use the technology for biometrics to do a facial recognition or to take a thumbprint without storing that information, or keeping anything that is unique to you, something that could be valuable if it was stolen or misused. And until the public trusts enough in that technology, they're not going to be comfortable with it, and that could take some time. Do we have another question? Yeah.
I had a venue Wi-Fi question. So you give free Wi-Fi to guests that walk in and they usually agree to it. There's a second screen that comes up. Do you do anything with that data afterwards? Like, I don't know, do you implement it moving forward? Like, this many people got on the Wi-Fi, we should expand it. Do you limit it? Because a lot of older buildings don't have good service. So it's like you offer that service, but then it's like what happens after that service?
Great question. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to tell people you have access to Wi-Fi, but at the end of the day, what are you going to use it for? If you're going to sit there and you're going to stream Netflix while the game's going on, I mean, you can, but that's going to suck real bad, right? we want to provide enough bandwidth for you to get on social media and do things and tell people you're having fun at our organization, right? We don't collect personal data. We will to ask you, do you want to join our mailing list? Yes, you can, or no, you don't. It's up to you. But yeah, we look at the statistics and we look at bandwidth usage and we say, yeah, we've got X number of people here. We don't have as many people here. Matter of fact, we use that data to kind of drive business to other areas. What do we need to do to activate this particular area? Because we've got a whole bunch of people that are hanging out over here. So yeah, we do look at that for sure. We just try to use it to make better business decisions. But at the end of the day, it comes down to trust, right? What are we actually doing with that data? We have to build that trust with you.
Yeah, and I would always add, because we run into the same issue, right? Don't build the Wi-Fi for Thanksgiving dinner when it's just, a Monday night dinner, so to speak. So I would say collect the data, use it to make an informed business decision, and then just keep those charts, but don't store that personal information.
Right.
I think that's where the fear comes in. But you definitely want to have charts to make informed business decisions from.
Yeah. And this is a clear point. If you guys are jumping on someone's guest Wi-Fi, use a VPN. Just putting that out there. Just be safe.
Next question here.
Since you guys were talking about people trying to interact with the monitors or anything like that, there is a new device called the Flipper Zero, which can read, write, copy, emulate, RFID, infrared. So they would be able to actually read these devices and emulate a signal to them. How would you guys actually go about preventing access via that way when it can actually completely read those and create an emulation?
I'm pretty sure I said no questions from that table.
Yeah, I got you though. I got you on this one. So what you can do, it's actually something that came from the military a while back. You encrypt the signal, right? But they're still copying the entire signal, so they have your encryption. Only thing you do, you change the encryption so they match each other. You just have to have some kind of hash or seed that lets you know how it's incrementing. So while you might grab it this one time, the next time you use it, it might not be the same. Very much the same principle behind the same chip on your debit or ATM card, right? So when you swipe, I think I told you guys tons of times, if you swipe your card, that machine reads and writes. So it can copy your card or it can read your card, either way. But when you use a chip, every time you use a chip, it increments based on an algorithm. So, hey, I know it used this time. If you try to use it just sequentially, it's not going to work unless you have that algorithm to make the next encrypted step, right? So that's how I would approach it. And I'm sure there's a lot, I'm talking in a very broad base here, like 10,000 foot view. There's a lot of other things that go into that. But I would approach it that way and then break down into more secure values and processes for, one, passing RFID in a place like this or Bluetooth in a place like this. That's something I'll probably be reluctant to do unless I had good security on it as a whole.
Yeah, that can require a big upgrade in infrastructure though to be able to do that, because if you've got a generation 1 key card system, that can be really vulnerable to devices like that because it doesn't have that built in. That's not a software upgrade. That requires new keypads at each door and new cards handed out to everybody.
Absolutely.
And one thing I'll add, for me, I'm not even worried about that device, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The moment you walk into my venue, if it's a playoff game or whatever the case may be, I give you a bag that blocks the signal, zip it in, you can take the bag wherever you want with you. When you're done, we unlock it, have a nice day at home. So that wouldn't instill any fear in my venue if I'm running a venue.
We have a question over here.
Hi, my name is Megan. How are you as well?
How you doing?
Thanks. Good, thank you. You guys earlier talked about how you have to create value to a ticket, and I know with sports you can also stream and you're at home and you can watch the games that way as well. So how do you get a fan to want to come to the venue and take the risk of buying a ticket online if they're not a season ticket holder? How do you tell them you can trust us and it's safe and the value of your ticket is gonna be worth coming to this venue? If they're not, if they're just going just to see that game that one time, how do you sell that one guest that might be new to the venue?
That's a good question. At the end of the day, it's all about entertainment value. My job is to entertain you. My job is to keep you focused on the lights and bells and whistles and cool things that are going on, right? If I can sell you on that experience one time and you like it and you want to continue to return, we've already built that trust. I don't need to build anything else. If you're concerned about the technology infrastructure and whether or not we're going to keep your data safe, you've got other things to worry about than whether or not you're going to come to a Bruins game, right? But if you want to have those kinds of conversations with the technologists who are here, that's why we make ourselves available to you, to explain those kinds of things. Because we get questions from consumers all the time. How are you using my data? Are you keeping my credit card stuff? Are you PCI compliant, et cetera, right? But really what it comes down to is we don't want you to think about that. We want you to come on, have a great time, come back and enjoy yourselves and spend more money.
Yeah. I think from a technology standpoint, as a fan, technology is not the draw to get you to go to the game physically. Technology is more of a tool to make it easier for you to go to the game. Get rid of the friction points, make it less of a line, make it less of a wait.
That is no lie. How many of you have been to a hotel or chosen a hotel online because the Wi-Fi was good?
Yeah.
No. Mm-hmm. How many of you have not gone back to a hotel because the Wi-Fi was butt? Yeah, me for sure, right? Mm-hmm. So here's the deal. We have to create a technological profile that allows you ease of access and entertains you. Mm-hmm. It's a tall order.
Right. I think we have time for one more question.
Sorry, over here. This might be a difficult question for you guys. We have heard about the external risk and impact of outside threat actors, but what about the internal risk that a business could face? And what are your thoughts on the implementation of zero trust architecture approach with the advance of technology today for the entertainment industry and educational industry, which both hold very high number of confidential information?
Yeah, that is a good question.
No questions from that table either.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the beauty about zero trust, there's a good side and a bad side to it, right? For the zero trust architecture to work, it requires learning and understanding, right? It requires me knowing behavior, knowing pattern, and essentially exactly what it is that's happening. So if your question is from the inside threats perspective, then I would definitely recommend that you implement the zero trust architecture or the framework of that, because what zero trust architecture allows to happen is, I'll use Peter as an example, right? Peter wakes up every day, he logs into his machine at 6 a.m. He typically logs into ULearn, checks his Outlook, right? Goes to grab a cup of coffee, so to speak, and he's been doing that for 10 years, right? I now have the data on Peter to know exactly what Peter's behavior is. Now, if that pattern changes, Peter logs in at 2 a.m., goes to grab coffee at 3, the system will lock itself because I know now that is not Peter. Mm-hmm. So I have certain mechanisms in play that will require that Peter validates and ensures that he proves himself to the system before he can log back in. So I do think zero trust architecture is the way of the future for high levels, if you're like at a level 3 in terms of the cybersecurity maturity posture. And I do think it's something that a lot of organizations should seek to implement, so to speak. And I think that's where we're heading, so to speak, right? Because to me, putting in usernames and passwords and all of that, that is not the future. Those days are gone, right? Nobody's going to remember a 15, 20, 30, 40 character password, right? Because that's what the federal government's requiring now. But having passwordless systems that can actually track behavior essentially is what the zero trust architecture is based on, and ensuring that whoever's in the system is who they say they are.
Mm-hmm. It's like, have you ever played the game Hot Hands? You hit the other person's hands, right? You have to trust that person, like, hey, you're not gonna hit my hand too hard, we're just gonna play a nice game. Zero trust is just not playing. I'm gonna make you prove to me I can trust you every time. So don't hit me, right? So don't hit me. Zero trust is I'm gonna constantly not trust you. I'm gonna constantly validate you over and over again. I know I just saw you when you left the club, said the bouncer, but I need your ID again, right? But you just saw me, I need your ID again. That constant validation goes into zero trust. And then when you talk about insider threats, and I told a lot of you, that's almost impossible to stop. A well-planned insider threat is going to happen if it's well-planned. It's almost impossible to stop, but you can mitigate your risk with the zero trust architecture. And as you mitigate that risk, you want to start thinking about things, knowing patterns, knowing about people, knowing about even their credit. I know when I work for the government and things of that sort, credit checks are available constantly. Checking my credit, they're checking my debt to see am I at risk. There are algorithms you can put on 365 and other platforms that'll let me know if you're a hazardous employee. Are you going to quit? Are you going to transfer? Are you being nefarious? Because remember, you don't own those emails. You don't own those accounts. Your company owns those accounts. Therefore, that's their information. They can use it any given time. So just make aware of that. Insider threats have to be extremely planned out. Don't do one, but they're very, if you do one, they have to be very well planned out, and they're almost impossible to stop. And Mr. King said earlier, if you do get hit, sometimes you don't know for days, months. The average time of figuring out a hit, a well-planned hit, is about 3 to 4 months on average. So like, you can go on about business and not even know anything's going on for 3 or 4 months down the line. Like if you look back in the early 2000s, those companies like Equifax and things of that sort, they were still trying to figure out what was going on, and then the federal government had to step in and say, look, release all this information. So did I answer your question? Or somebody answer your question?
Josh, do you have anything?
No, that was perfect.
Great, excellent. Thanks everybody, some great questions out there. With that, I think we're ready to move on. Thank you, panelists. Great job.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks, Josh. Very good.
All right, everyone. Ooh, hot mic. Feel free to continue to enjoy your lunch as we go ahead with our second panel, Digital Trends in Sports and Entertainment. I know we were touched upon a little bit of e-ticketing before, but we're going to mention more about that trend in e-ticketing and also esports, which is obviously up and coming. Diane Santuri will be leading this panel. She's Associate Professor, Design Department, College of Engineering and Design and College of Business at Johnson & Wales University. Diane has been with the university since 2008, and she has extensive experience in the area of marketing, information management, and emerging technology. She is the lead faculty for the Digital Marketing and Social Media program at JWU and has presented at Management Marketing Association for the past few years on the topic of emerging technology. Plus, she's also a graduate of Johnson & Wales University and Bryant University. So, Diane, we look forward to hearing from you and your talented panel. Go ahead.
Thank you all so much. Well, now that we've heard about what technology can do, and we're a little afraid now to use it, we're going to talk about the fun stuff we can do with technology and also useful things that we can do with technology. So first what I'd like to do is have each of the speakers introduce themselves briefly.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Samia Majub. I'm the Vice President of Business Strategy here at the Garden, both for the Garden and the Boston Bruins. And yeah, really happy to be here. Looking forward to definitely talking about more of the fun stuff.
Hello, everybody. Aaron Lampkin, Senior Director of Strategy for Ticketing Premium Seating at the NHL League offices. Prior to this, I was Vice President of Ticket Sales and Services with the Seattle Sounders and the MLS. 2013 graduate of Johnson & Wales University, Denver, and a recipient of 2016 Young Alumni Award. So really excited to be here. You know, having gone to the school and went through a number of experiences, I say this is the biggest difference between going to Johnson & Wales University and going to other colleges and institutions that are out there. You really get to see your education come to life. So I really look forward to sharing just some insights that we're seeing across the industry and answering any questions that you may have.
Okay, wonderful. So one of the big things we want to talk about today to kind of gear things differently are the 4 E's. Specifically, we've all heard about the 4 P's. We're going to talk now for digital marketing purposes about the 4 E's. The first one being experience, and that's mainly a very important one, obviously, for any venue. So can you talk a little bit about some of the important things that you're putting in place to help with that experience in terms of anyone that's coming to your facility?
Sure, I'll kick us off. So maybe to start, I'll tell you a bit what business strategy means here in this organization. It's really, we are the sort of the data collectors and data insights givers to the business, right? So we are using data in the best ways to provide the fan who comes into this venue the best and most seamless experience. So seamless is a key word here. It's one of our top priorities to make sure that you as a fan who are coming here for whether it's a Boston Bruins game, Boston Celtics game, or any sort of concert, other events, that your experience from out on the street all the way to your seat is as smooth and enjoyable as possible so that you can truly get the most out of the entertainment throughout that whole journey. So that's kind of in a nutshell, like, I guess, again, how we use the data to then, provide really positive impact here.
Yeah, and at the core, to add to what Sam mentioned, at the core of everything that we do and all the protections that allow us now to come out and use some of the technology is experience. I know a question was thrown out earlier on why would you come down, and I know we talked about the biggest rival being, your bathroom, your fridge, your TV. Is a tailored experience is something that you might not be able to get in your living room. And so as we begin to think about our surveying, as we begin to think about the use of QR codes and geo-targeting, as we begin to look at biometrics and access controls when you enter the building and notifications that we can use, it's all to have a tailored experience. And so while first thinking about how safe we are first and continuing to execute on the safety and the trust, it ultimately comes down to making sure that you can have a once-in-a-lifetime experience. As we look at the NHL and everybody who has their home games, we look at those as 44 unique experiences. Game 1 is not the same as game 44 and none of them in between. And so it's critical at the core of what we do and how we use this data that we apply it solely to make sure that we can provide that unique customized experience that you ultimately want, that you might not be able to get in your living room. And if you do prefer to have it in your living room, that you would still have a high quality experience. Not that you have to go to every live event and ultimately to have the best experience. And I think as we begin to look at trends and as the conversation evolves, we'll begin to talk about how we're meeting the consumer right where the consumer is at. And if the consumer happens to be in our building, or if the consumer happens to be on their couch in the living room, that they're going to have a great experience irregardless, which I think is the expansion as we think about the sports industry.
Okay, excellent. So one of the things, for speaking of experiences, pulling into the garage here and driving from Cranston, I was backtracked using Waves, which I love. Wonderful technology. I gave up some of my data, obviously, using that app, but it was helpful. So one of the things that would help with that, for instance, if I pulled in the garage, it would tell me where to park. So how often do you use push notifications? Do you use any sort of features like that for your attendees?
Absolutely. So we have an app for the venue here. It's our TD Garden Hub app. And through that app, we're able to provide, all sorts of all the information that you need to attend an event, purchase tickets even, purchase parking. Everything that has to do with your visit here is through this app. And we continue to try to evolve that, enhance that, and create a better and better experience there. But one of the biggest things that we've all experienced over the last handful of years is the digitalization of ticketing itself, right? So having paperless ticketing, how many of you would say, if assuming everybody's had that experience, how many would say that's an improvement on paper tickets? Most people here, right? So that's a big one, but what other experiences can we create with the app that make it easier for people? So push notifications specifically, we use those really for information, right? So there's always going to be something unexpected happening in this industry, such as, maybe there's a delay in a show, right? Doors are opening later, or perhaps a cancellation, right? Some of the challenges in terms of artists delaying their shows. So the faster we can get you guys your information, the better it's going to be for you, right? If you know before you leave the door that, oh, I forgot to buy parking, but we let you know, hey, by the way, you can buy parking through the app, right? These are some of the things that we want to make as easy as possible.
Yeah, and I'll name drop just a few partners that are out there, more so for you to do your research on what are some of the tech that we are using to ultimately be able to do this. And I highlight a few teams and look at Florida. We just came off of All-Star down in Florida. And we repurposed a lot of the lots for NHL events, whether that be celebrations that are happening, unique experiences, players are coming out there. And so the parking was completely different. If we looked at where our Fan Fest was, It was about 30 minutes away from the actual facility in the venue in which we were holding All-Star. And so we use companies like Satisfy Labs, which uses some degree of integration from AI ultimately to help us. We look at our access control and we look at the digital ticket and the transfer of that ticket so we can communicate directly to the end user of who's going to show up to the building. What it allows us to do is say, hey, parking is now starting to fill up, and be able to alert you, because we know from surveys and fan sentiment that, hey, I got stuck in parking and I missed the beginning of the game or the intro in, and that's it tailors your whole experience from there. It's hard to rebound from that when your initial experience was so negative. And so we begin to use AI to ultimately be able to help us. What you start to see in few venues, I know like in the NFL, the Niners are really good at this. In the NHL, we have our Capitals who are also really good at this, but it's kind of these tech rooms. And it says, this is how many people have entered your venue. This is how many people have entered your parking lot. This is the part of the venue that they are entering. They're in there on the east side. So we know, hey, it's going to be long lines over there. We now can use our game day operations staff to move people to the west side of the building to ultimately make sure everybody can get in, ingress and ingress as efficient as possible. So I think this is one of the cool things that we're starting to see with a lot of the tech, not only in just like a push notification. We want you on your app where you can get a lot of the contact at the league level. A lot of our app is going to be around like player moments. Our Instagram, we see we have multiple handles, whether it's PR, that's going to talk about more of the stats, but then on our actual handle, you see a lot of more of the highlights. Seeing products like a Satisfy Labs being able to come in and ultimately, allow us to reduce in staff, and as we think about the pandemic, we obviously got smaller as a sports industry. This allows us to continue to be efficient in our processes. And so how can you start to use like AI? How can you start to use push notifications? And I think as mentioned in our intro speakers, having like the ecosystem and in a one-stop shop. The last thing that we want is for you to have to go, to 4 different integrations ultimately to figure out how to park and how to access your tickets and get into the venue. So how can we now bring all these partners into one centralized area and ultimately communicate to you so you have a one-stop and more of a seamless, frictionless experience as you begin to go to the sporting event. So I think it's probably, push notifications, AI, what's ultimately allowed us to be a lot more efficient and understand a quicker way to offer a customized and tailored experience.
I'll just add one more thing to that. So kind of tying the previous sessions, there has to be that sort of foundation of trust in the technology. So you all know that you have the option to, whether it's opt into emails or have notifications turned on in every app, right? So those are things that, when we're in the sports and entertainment world, like you want to get those notifications, right? You want to know what's going on. You want to see the latest highlight, of your favorite team. So just keeping in mind like that again is like a major factor in the experience, is opt into the experience, right?
Okay. That was something we were going to talk about next, was the ecosystems. That's good. That's out of the way. So in terms of social media, because a lot of times people will potentially discover that there's a new event, there's a new concert that's coming up, and a lot of times we'll find it from other influencers. It might be friends that are mini influencers, or it might be actual influencers that we follow. So how beneficial do you find that to be in terms of the number of people that then attend those events? Do you have any connections or partnerships like that?
I could kick that one off. I think it's interesting because as we began to think about hockey specifically, how do we become more inclusive? How do we now expand our reach? And while some kids might not have grown up in a traditional hockey market, doesn't mean that they should be excluded from the experience. And so I'd say probably at least in the last 3 to 5 years, we started to really see influencers emerge as a driving factor for a lot of our events. As we began to think, and I go back to All-Star, and we also did our stadium series in Carolina, but we brought down influencers and they were at practice. and they're engaging with the players, and it's a new audience that ultimately they're bringing into the game. And they're saying, hey, I come from your similar background, and me, you, us, the consumer, we can relate to that ultimately says, should we go buy a ticket or should we go buy a subscription, ultimately to be able to watch hockey. And so, you know, it's one thing to know that you're not necessarily like the expert, and it's okay to lend your platform to the experts ultimately to drive the traffic that you want, so then you can now educate on what your experience is. And so, yes, we use influencers across the league for our events. I know on the team side they use influencers, and it's really like leveraging their platform, saying, hey, come to us. What do you want to do? Like, how would you grow the audience? How would you incorporate people coming out? What are the unique content that you want to capture? And how can we now repurpose that? How can we be a part of the action? So in you know, an old school thought, it was so much the sport led the influence. Now we're seeing the influence lead the sport. And for, you know, organizations to be okay with that, because it's creating a more inclusive environment, which ultimately allows for the sport to continue to grow.
Yeah, and I'll add, you know, to that point, right? We want to give you guys, everybody, fans, you know, fans who are future fans, I would say, current fans, what they want. So one of the key data points for us is engagement metrics on our social media platforms. So, you know, we are tailoring our content, tailoring our messaging to things that resonate more with our audiences, broader audiences, right? Making sure that we are hitting very diverse audiences, and to know, you know, what content does well, what doesn't. We do testing, things like that. But I think it's one of the most exciting areas. You know, lucky to be in such an amazing sports organization that tends to lead the league in social engagement as well as followers. So it's something we really take pride in, right? We want to be the best in not just our sports, but also, you know, our entertainment, as well as our inclusivity, and really make sure people want to be here, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you're not here, engage with us on, you know, social media.
So that's the second E, engagement. So we covered that one. The third one is exclusivity. So let's talk a little bit about subscription-based themes. In a lot of ways, we're seeing everything go subscription-based right now. So can you talk a little bit about that in terms of how that's being implemented?
I could start off, and I'll put it into two buckets, and I'll talk a little bit more the industry than just the NHL. You know, and this is something I think that was really induced coming off of the pandemic, and allowed us as a sports industry. We're trying to figure out, we can't have people in buildings, and if we did, it was a limited capacity. We still needed to engage because people have already paid for the experience. You know, they were looking for something to do, and, you know, candidly, sports fills a big void in people's everyday lifestyle. And so while subscriptions have been around for a while in like the EPL, and you look at like a Man City who has 350,000 fans that are season ticket members who will never step foot in the building. Mind-blowing, right? 350,000 plus people that will never step foot in the building. But they're all engaging because they're members, because they have a subscription model. So they're able to follow the team. They're able to have a different series of content that you would have, whether it be, you know, you're looking at a live shot at practice, whether you're getting exclusive interviews that aren't going to show up on SportsCenter or ESPN. And so in the two buckets that we look at is we also see Netflix, right, and Hulu, who are now having these big TV streaming deals and whatnot. We see like the Hard Knocks in the NFL that kind of gives a behind the scenes look at what it feels like to go through training camp. I think they have a rookie series as well. And it's the highs and the lows, the stuff you don't get to see when you come out to a sporting event. We look at LeBron James in the NBA and his barbershop series where they just talk shop. And it's them giving candid opinion on like sports industry as a whole. And previously, you know, we see LeBron James just on the playing surface. We see F1. You talk about an emergence of a sport in a vertical where now we get to really understand, you know, from a monetary perspective, wow, this thing really drives a ton of sponsorships, and there's a whole different business model in sport that we wouldn't have seen just going to F1 races, you know, overseas. And so I look at it in like one bucket that you see, hey, there's this subscription-based content that's going to allow you to understand the personality, and it speaks to engagement, is the personality of the athlete in of sport. There's another that says, how am I going to digest content that is unique? And so, like, while we would love everybody to come out to the arena or the stadiums to watch it live, we know that's not the reality. We also know that, like, there's a customized experience, and there's a subset of fans who never want that experience. They don't want to be around 18,000 plus people, you know, sharing their biggest moments. Sometimes they want to sit at home. And they are entitled to, and they should. And so we started to see, especially across our league and the sports landscape, you know, how can you come out with a membership model that now your benefits are digital? It allows you access to the players. It allows you access to the teams. It allows you to engage in real time. And you might have more exclusive events that are going to be completely different than coming down and meeting the player and shaking their hand. You might get a push notification or a QR code that comes through this subscription that says, hey, because we had QR codes all over Boston, we know that we're going to drive people to the north end, and we're going to have a player show up, and we're going to actually send a push notification. Everybody has a subscription-based model first, because we know that they're engaging on that side of the town. So again, like, how do we now use this data ultimately to create new experiences? As we think about a venue, and sorry I'm a little bit long-winded, but if we begin to think about a venue, right, and we think about, like, how many exclusive experiences can we offer as far as those goes, and I'm going to talk about hockey. We have, like, the bench warmer experience. We have the national anthem, where sometimes we'll have skaters that come out and present that. We'll have a group experience or a sponsorship experience. I could probably sit here and name, like, maximum maybe 10 to 15. Now being able to push through a digital subscription, we now can take that experience far beyond as we begin to think about what is our approach. And it's no longer, hey, during the season we're going to engage with you. We're going to engage with you 365. The sport is not played in the off season. Life is happening in the off season. So now how with a subscription can we make the off season come to life? Because athletes are still preparing. They're still raising their families. They're still having those key critical moments. They're taking vacations. A lot of the things that we would connect to outside of the playing surface. And so, you know, I put it in multiple buckets like that from a league perspective and an industry perspective. But I think it is critical, and I think we're going to see a lot of verticals coming out of being able to push a subscription. And now we can have, instead of 18,000 people watching the game, we can have hundreds of thousands of people watching the game and having a tailored season ticket member type experience.
Yeah, one last thing I want to talk about is AR and VR and how that's an emerging technology. How do you feel that's going? And we've talked a lot about sports, but it's also about entertainment, this panel. So can you speak a little bit about how you think that may potentially be integrated in the future, or what you see in terms of competitiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the very, very exciting areas, I would say, like very, very much in the early exploratory stages for us here. But you know, I know that there's been a couple of really cool examples out in the marketplace. Oh, I won't steal your thunder about the NBA one, but you know, and you've seen it, AR, like there's been a couple of activations where you see like a, you know, an object that's, you know, augmented reality, basically a show, right, before the start of a game, or at a halftime show. Those things are, I think there's so much that we can do with that, but I think it's still very early, and there's still some very foundational, you know, work to be done there. But I'll let Aaron speak to.
I don't highlight the NBA very often, but any of you who caught All-Star, I thought something was really emerging just as far as sports go, and I thought it was cool because it came down to like mobile, which generally you're seeing goggles go on, or again you're watching it on TV before, you know, a game. But they recently did this tool and. You know, they took Ahmad Rashad, who's a TV analyst, and they went around and they circled them with their phone, and kind of speaks to like the digital subscription, but through the app. Like while you're watching the game, you can highlight over players, and they turned him into, I think it was Anthony Horton, one of the players for the Lakers. And I know not a good word to say in this building, but they highlighted him, and he turns into that player. And he goes down and he gets a dunk, and the camera zooms in, same camera angle, same shot, and it's him. It's him who is now there, and again, I think it's very early. I think even as they begin, they're going to do a lot of learning with that on the NBA side, and it's starting to push something or show something, but I think it's not foolproof quite yet. But as we think about an experience outside of being in the venue, or even being in the venue, I was at the SBJ conference last year, and we had another team begin to talk about their whole experience, and we talk about engaging and gamifying game day. It really gives you a chance to be able to gamify on your phone the different things that are happening that you're not really seeing in the building. Creates your experience and touch points that you didn't necessarily have. So I'm excited to see the emergence of it. I don't know where it's going to go quite yet. As we begin to look at that, I think as we begin to look at NFTs and blockchain, and how they get, theirs, we begin to look at, using biometrics to enter a building, our grab and go stations that we have throughout. I think these things are all kind of being coupled together, and we don't necessarily know what's next. And I think that's really exciting for the people that are sitting in this room. I was really mind blown. I call myself young. But to see the original presentation from our speaker and seeing how things are going to evolve, a lot of you are going to be making a lot of these key critical decisions. We talk about trust. A lot of you are going to be setting up the policies around trust. A lot of you are going to be defining what that next experience is, and you already are. And so I think, it's a really exciting time to be in the sports industry. It's really exciting. It's really scary. I'm like, I don't know what y'all are going to do to me and my fan experience, but I'm signed up and I'm along for the ride. But I think this is incredibly exciting about, not only AR, VR, but all the other mechanisms that we're using to really tailor the experience.
Okay, great. Let's open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Lisa, I have one here.
Hi, just had a quick question. What advice could you give to us, pulling the older crowd in? I know that's been kind of a tough one, especially with the innovation of technology, because my grandpa still goes to Broncos games with his printed ticket and receipt, and will sit in his chair the entire time with just his one beer. And that's his experience.
Yeah, that's a good one. It definitely was a challenge to make sure that, again, to the point of inclusivity, that every type of fan was able to ultimately go through this kind of newer digital experience. So, I would say I'd refer back to a couple years back. I was with the Milwaukee Brewers, and we had just gone out with 100% digital ticketing. So I was kind of in the thick of that. Communication was a huge part of it. Comes down to, you communicate in all sorts of different ways, and ultimately it gets personal, right? So doing reach out to make sure that your clients, whoever they are, whether they come to one game or 20 games or all 80, is to, ultimately handhold. And, doing the hand-holding for a little bit, ultimately there's more and more adoption, more and more comfort. So there's no easy answer. I think it's tailoring to different audiences.
Be patient. Be patient. It takes time. There's education. There's a gap there. Be willing to highlight key moments. There are key things that are excited to your grandparents. That's a good time to show them how it can come to life. In a digital perspective, but I think it's critical that we be patient with that group as we go throughout. And one of the big pain points when physical tickets went away was I have no way to commemorate that, right? And now, 8 years later, we're seeing an NFT token, you know, that now drives commemoration, right? And something that they can have and hold on to. And so, like, you know, I think asking the right questions and understanding their experience, to Sam's point, and being patient and saying this meets that and showing it over time, I think is probably a good play. But I'm not an expert in it, so I could be missing. But I think patience is critical.
Hello. Oh my gosh, sorry. I haven't talked in a microphone in a while. My question is related to kind of the new trend in hockey of the projection of the ads on the boards. And I don't know if either of you were involved in any of the decision making around that. Obviously, it was sort of in a way out of necessity due to, you know, trying to make up for losses during the pandemic. But how do you navigate making a decision like that and determining how it will impact people at home and their experience? Because I'm sure you've heard complaints, but there's some people that don't mind them. So, like, how do you navigate decisions like that that will impact the experience for viewers at home?
I can start with that one. I won't be able to answer fully, but DED is what you're talking about, which are digitally enhanced dashboards. And anybody who's watched the hockey game, you see we had consistent logos. So if you're in the arena, you see those solidified logos that are definite, right? On TV, based on when a player moves to one side of the ice, the other side of the ice, you see these dashboards flip and it's different sponsors. I don't think that it necessarily came out of needing to make up revenues. I think what a big portion of it came out of being able to grow the sport and being able to, you know, digest different sponsors into the game. And so I think it kind of speaks to, you know, our inclusive nature. Other thing that I'd say is this is what we learn in tech. You know, is the future, is the first presentation we talked about, is really undefined. Is we're really learning in real time, and I think that's what's critical, is like being able to have the buffers in which you can evaluate what you have released. And then ultimately, if we're talking DED 2 years from now, we're probably not seeing what you're mentioning on the TV where there's a little bit of blur, the puck gets lost here or there, right? These are all things that happen in tech, you know, and we're trying to figure it out now. Are those things so major that we should stop the innovation? Like in innovation, you're gonna have challenges. In innovation, stuff's not gonna work and you have to be able to adapt. And I'd say as we went throughout the year, I think you've seen a lot of the adaption of that and the changing of that, but I think it's something that's gonna be critical that we go forward, not only to grow revenues, but to bring other sponsors in. I talk about F1. You know, they drive, you know, billions of dollars off a single race because they have miles of sponsorship. We don't have miles of a footprint in an arena, but we do have miles of digital footprint in an arena, and so why not maximize it? And so, you know, I think it's a little bit of the growing pains that we're seeing right now, but I'm confident that it's an incredible vertical. I think it's gonna help clubs out, which is ultimately those dollars in some way drip into your players and the quality of play that's happening on the ice. And so the sport is going to get better because there's more money to spend on, you know, the experience we're talking about. You know, that's going to create revenue models that we're going to put into ticketing. That's going to put revenue models we're going to put into building renovation. Another trend that we're seeing in sports right now, you know, no longer are we seeing these, you know, 77 suites that are across the building and 12, 24s and 36s. We're now seeing these like open spaces where you can go have a high top. If you wanted to sit down, you could have a seat to sit down. You could do standing room only. That goes into some of these areas of the building that now we can repurpose and bring in a younger audience or a new audience. So I think it's something that like we're still learning, but I think it's worth the growing pains.
And the last E was emotion. So hopefully we got inspired by today's session, and we continue to have fun with this technology, as well as being curious and educated about it as well. So I think this will conclude. Does this conclude? Any other? Yep. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all. Actually, can we keep the applause going? We'd like to thank Daniel King, Peter Reed, Diane Centauri, all of our panelists today. You guys were excellent. In just a moment, we're going to bring Rachel Locke up. She's the development manager of the Sports Museum here at TD Garden to say a few words on a special tour that you will get here today. We are going to do the tour in stages, so if you look at the back of your name tag, it's groups A, B, and C. We'll bring you out in groups, so that way they're smaller, and if you obviously have any questions along the way, so that way everyone can hear along the tour. So please welcome Rachel to the stage.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Rachel. I'm the development manager for the Sports Museum. We're a physical museum inside TD Garden, and then we have 2 educational programs that we created. So we're a nonprofit organization. One's Boston vs. Bullies, and the other one's Stand Strong. We provide them free of charge to all kids that are part of it. So today you're going on a special arena tour of TD Garden. You're going to be seeing the Celtics locker room, the press room, the family room, and then get to go on the court for some photos. So whenever you're ready, Group A, our guides are over there to take you, and then we'll call the other 2 groups around. So thanks, guys.
All right, everyone, welcome back. How was your tour? Pretty cool, right? I just want to thank everyone again for coming out. Just by a show of hands, who learned something from today? It could be anything, something good. Chances are you're going to share some sort of words of encouragement or piece of wisdom or little nugget of information in the future and think back to this very day and go, hey, it was worth it. I hope you get that from that. I've had such a nice time being your mistress of ceremonies. And for some closing remarks, I would like to bring up your president one more time, Marie Bernardo Souza.
Well, I, for one, think it's been a fantastic day. What do you guys think? It really has been incredibly fabulous, and 2 or 3 of our panelists came up to me and said, you must be so proud of your students. And I said, I'm proud of them every day for your work ethic, for the way that you really take your academics seriously, and you're not afraid. You have the courage to really experiment and try new things and push the boundaries, and that's what makes JWU a special place. Today, we have to recognize a long list of people who made this day possible, and I want to share my deepest appreciation to everyone at TD Garden, the Boston Bruins organization, and Johnson & Wales, who played a role in today's program. A special note of appreciation to our keynote speaker, Dan King, and to our Mistress of Ceremonies, Michaela Johnson. I, for one, am leaving today and probably deleting all my social media based on everything I learned today. Since Johnson & Wales' founding more than 100 years ago, the university continues to design curriculum that anticipates the needs and meets the needs of students and industry. That has led the university to engage in such an exciting and rewarding partnership as the one we have with the talented professionals of TD Garden and the Boston Bruins organization. Today we had an amazing opportunity to hear from some of our accomplished alumni, our accomplished faculty, and we're so proud that their JWU education helped prepare them for leadership roles that they are in now and for what they will achieve in the years ahead. To all our students, I look forward to the day when many of you will join us as alumni and share your professional expertise and highlight your accomplishments. I understand that's actually happening now, particularly for our cyber students who are out in the workforce during their senior year. I hope this experience will be one you long remember and inspire you as you complete your education and start your career. Thanks again for joining us at Press Play, the emerging digital culture of sports and entertainment. To conclude today's program, I would like our chairperson, Lee Elkison, to deliver some closing remarks. Lee, I'm going to make you stand here so I can embarrass you for a moment. So this program would not be possible without Lee's leadership. He corralled a group of committed faculty and staff and really put together what I believe was a tremendous day. And he always puts our students first, always looking for new opportunities. And I just want to say thank you. It matters to all of us, and you did a phenomenal job.
Thank you. Thank you, President Bernardo Sousa. I sincerely appreciate and I'm humbled by your remarks. This was truly a team effort, as you know. Things like this don't happen with just one person. I hope everyone found this seminar enlightening, enjoyable, and most of all, educational. Please bear with me as I thank several people that were involved in creating this successful event today. First, please let me thank our Mistress of Ceremonies again, Michaela Johnson, who did a phenomenal job for us, and unfortunately, our keynote speaker who had to leave to defend our country, Daniel King. So thank him in his absentia. Also, thanks to our facilitator for the Cyber Threats and Security Panel, Peter Reed, and his panelists, Josh Carley, Anthony Chavez, and Douglas Chondro. Thank you. Please also thank our facilitator for the Digital Trends panel, Diane Santuri, and our panelists, Samia Mahoub and Aaron Lampkin. Thank you very much. We also appreciate and thank Brent Desati, Senior Director of Corporate Sponsorships, and Karen Kelly, Director of Corporate Partnership Service and Activation, for their efforts to help with this panel participants and for hosting this event with their colleagues at the TD Garden. So thank you. Now a very special thank you to my colleague Lisa Carlson, Director of Events at Johnson Wales University, for her significant efforts to coordinate the details and logistics for this event. Without her efforts, we would not be sitting here today. So Lisa, thank you very much. I would also like to thank Dean of the College of Engineering and Design, Frank Tweedy, and the Dean of the College of Hospitality Management, Jennifer Gallipo, as well as my Sports, Entertainment, and Event Management Department colleagues for their support of my efforts to organize this event. Thank you very much. I also want to have special recognition for Dean Tweedy, who also oversees the Cybersecurity Center in the College of Engineering and Design, which has been designated by the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security as a Center for Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense Education. So please congratulate Dean Tweedy and his colleagues. I would like to thank everyone on the JW TD Garden Seminar Committee for their support, especially my colleague in the Department of Sports, Entertainment, and Event Management, and previous chair of this event, Lou Polano. Also, Cindy Parker, Vice President of College of Professional Studies, and Angelo Patasi, Director of Corporate Relationships for the College of Professional Studies, for their advice and guidance. Thank you very much. And as you know, there's always many people behind the scenes, so I would also like to mention two colleagues that are back on campus in Providence, Christine Gallucci and Jennifer McDonald, who provided administrative support for Lisa and me as we organized the student attendance here today. So please thank them. And finally, I would like to thank in absentia Mark Herrera, Director of Safety, Security, and Education for the International Association of Venue Managers, who was instrumental in helping locate our fantastic keynote speaker, Daniel King. So thank you, all of you, for spending your time with us this afternoon, and drive home safely. Thank you. And that concludes our afternoon.